Who would have thought that Robin Gibb had been hiding a big secret from his fans and the whole world for many, many years, a secret that finally made everything make sense? It wasn't until he was 62 years old that he finally told everyone what people had already been guessing. Robin Gibb, one of the singers in the super famous band, the Bee Gees, was known for his awesome voice and mysterious vibe, but what was he really hiding? Let's dive in and find out. The Bee Gees started out in a very simple way with the Gibb brothers, three talented boys who really loved music, singing together and performing. When Robin was born along with his twin brother Maurice in December of 1949, they would later start a band with their big brother Barry. It wasn't until the 50s that the boys got really into music. They would borrow their older sister Leslie's records and listen to Elvis Presley, Tommy Steele, the Everly Brothers, and other famous artists. They made pretend guitars out of cardboard boxes and acted like they were putting on a show. In 1956, the brothers made their very first public performance at the GMA, a movie theater just a few blocks from their home. All the kids got to lip-sync to songs, so they brought their sister's records along. They practiced with some kids from the neighborhood named Paul Frost and Kenny Ricks, and they called their little group the Rattlesnakes. But just before they were about to go on stage, the sound guy accidentally dropped and broke Leslie's record. How unlucky! But the Gibb brothers were not the kind of kids who gave up easily. Luckily, Barry had a real guitar with him, so they just went up there and performed while he played. The crowd of kids absolutely loved it, and from that moment on, the brothers were fired up about singing and becoming famous. By May 1958, the Rattlesnakes had broken up after Paul Frost and Kenny Ricks left the group, but the Gibb brothers were not going to stop. They got back together and formed a new band called We Johnny Hayes and the Blue Cats, with Barry using the stage name Johnny Hayes. August 1958 was the beginning of a brand new chapter for the whole family. They packed up all their stuff and left England to start fresh in Australia. The whole family, including their older sister Leslie and their younger brother Andy, moved to a beach town called Redcliffe in Queensland, just northeast of Brisbane, to keep chasing their dream of making music. The brothers started hanging out at Redcliffe Speedway in 1959 and performed there in between the car races. This caught the eye of a man named Bill Good, one of the race car drivers. He liked them so much that he reached out to a radio DJ named Bill Gates, who also said the kids had something special about the way they sang together in harmony. Gates recorded their songs and played them on the radio. It was actually Gates who came up with the name Bee Gees, which stood for the first letters of Barry Gibb, Bill Good, and himself, Bill Gates. Later on, that name became Bee Gees, which people took to mean the brothers Gibb. Their dad, Hugh, ended up becoming their manager. Before they hit it big, Hugh was making money with his photography business, but once he became their manager, he put everything into helping his sons. At this point, they were already getting noticed, appearing on Australian TV shows like Anything Goes and Brisbane Tonight. On top of that, Robin and his brothers also performed at theaters, nightclubs, and bars. Even as young kids, their dad taught them how to sing Mills Brothers songs, while their mom, Barbara, picked out their outfits. Even with all that, though they were still really far from being successful, the brothers eventually met a man named Nat Kipner, an American songwriter and music producer who really understood how the music business worked. He had just become the head of artist and repertoire management at Spin Records, a brand new small independent music label. Kipner could see that the Bee Gees had something really special and truly believed in what they could do. Excited to help them break through, he became their manager and helped move them from Festival Records over to Spin Records. This was a really important move for them. Even though they still worked with Festival Records for getting their music out in Australia, Spin Records gave the Bee Gees a fresh new start. Through Kipner, they got connected with a guy named Ossie Byrne, a skilled recording engineer who also believed strongly in the brothers. Byrne welcomed them into his small homemade recording studio at St. Clair Studios in Hurstville, Sydney, where they began recording their music. Even though the studio was pretty basic and not super fancy, it gave the Bee Gees the freedom to experiment and really find their own sound. From that point on, they started getting more popular. They made it to number 35 on the charts with their first Australian hit, and their song Spicks and Specks was recorded. Things were moving along at a steady pace. Then, in February 1967, something really big happened. The Bee Gees auditioned for Robert Stigwood, a really well-known and powerful person in the music world who had a great eye for spotting talented artists. The audition went really well, and Stigwood was so blown away that he signed the Bee Gees to a 5-year deal. This meant their music would come out through Polydor Records in the UK and Atco Records in the US, which opened the door for them to become famous all around the world. Before long, people started comparing them to the Beatles, which brought both excitement and a lot of pressure as they stepped into this exciting new phase of their careers. With strong support behind them, the Bee Gees were ready to make it really big. To make their group stronger, they brought in Colin Peterson and Vince Maloney, giving them more room to grow and try new things. Their next single, released in Britain, called New York Mining Disaster 1941, created a huge buzz. Radio stations got copies of the record with no labels on them, just the song title, which made people start whispering that it might be a secret new Beatles song. The mystery surrounding the track really pulled listeners in, and New York Mining Disaster 1941 quickly shot up the charts, landing in the top 20 in both the UK and the US. This was a huge deal for the Bee Gees, who had been hungry for that kind of recognition. Finally, they were getting noticed on the world stage, catching the attention of fans and music critics everywhere with that exciting energy carrying them forward. The Bee Gees' journey rolled on with lots of ups and downs, plenty of praise from critics, and a whole lot of pressure as they worked hard to build their place in the music world. The band started dealing with some problems inside the group and creative disagreements in 1968. Right when they were at their most popular, they had a big 7-week tour scheduled in the US, but right before it was supposed to start, Robin Gibb collapsed and ended up in the hospital. He was told he was suffering from nervous exhaustion caused by all the stress he had been carrying. This put the Bee Gees in a really tough spot and forced them to make some hard choices about who would be in the group and what their future looked like. Even when Robin was not around, Barry and Maurice kept making music, but it just did not feel right without his voice. As time went on, things got really tense, and they had some major creative arguments. The fighting came to a head over a song called 1st of May, where Robin wanted a different song called Lamplight to be the main single. Instead, feeling like he was being pushed aside, Robin made the decision to leave the Bee Gees in 1969 to focus on making music on his own. Barry and Maurice tried to keep things going without him, but they could really feel that something important was missing. Their very first show without Robin at the talk of the town in London was a mix of happiness and sadness, even as they pushed forward with recording an album called Cucumber Castle. Robin not being there was impossible to ignore. Meanwhile, Robin found success on his own with his solo hit Saved by the Bell, which got people talking about what was going to happen with the Bee Gees. As Robin's solo career took off, it became really hard for Barry and Maurice to keep their duo going strong. They started working on their own individual projects, but ran into some bumps along the way. Brothers who were once incredibly close were now heading in very different directions, leaving fans everywhere wondering if the Bee Gees would ever get back together. By the middle of the 1970s, they started to patch things up. While on a vacation in Spain, Barry found himself thinking deeply about everything that had happened. Maurice reached out to Robin to say sorry for the arguments they had been through, and that small but meaningful gesture helped bring the Bee Gees back together again, ready to make music. As a trio, their reunion turned out to be a big success. In 1971, they put out their 9th album called Trafalgar, which included the hit single How Can You Mend a Broken Heart. That song helped them stage a real comeback, getting back into the UK top 10 after going through some really rough times both in their personal lives and their careers. During the 70s, the Bee Gees made a surprising move by jumping into the disco music scene, especially with Barry's incredible high-pitched falsetto voice. Songs like You Should Be Dancing were a real turning point for them, and being part of the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack locked in their place in music history. As the 70s came to a close and disco started to cool off, the Bee Gees' music still managed to connect with people. They had truly become icons in the music world, leaving behind a legacy that went way beyond just one era. By the end of 1979, the disco scene was starting to die down, and that brought some really tough times for the Bee Gees. There was a quick and strong backlash against disco music, and both fans and critics started losing interest in the genre that had once been so incredibly popular. Since the Bee Gees were so closely connected to disco, they had a hard time adjusting to this big change and faced rejection from radio stations and audiences who were turning their backs on everything disco related. On top of all that, they also had to deal with some legal trouble when a musician accused them of copying parts of their hit How Deep Is Your Love. At first, the court ruled against the Bee Gees, saying they had not provided enough expert evidence to support their side, but a few months later that decision was flipped and they were found not guilty, even though the whole experience was really emotionally draining. Even with all the hard times they went through, the Bee Gees held tightly onto their love for performing and their special bond with their fans. At one of their concerts, they paid tribute to their late brother Andy Gibb by including his voice in their song Our Love, Don't Throw It All Away. It was a truly touching moment that reminded everyone of Andy's spirit and the deep bond between the brothers, leaving the whole crowd feeling very moved. This emotional moment made the Bee Gees realize just how powerful and special the connection they had with their fans really was. Inspired by that love and support, Barry, Robin, and Maurice launched a worldwide tour called One Night Only. Fueled by the incredible energy from their fans, the tour turned out to be a massive success, giving their careers a brand new burst of life and reconnecting them with fans all over the globe. The tour gave the Bee Gees a fresh sense of purpose, and they kept on performing, enjoying a whole new wave of popularity. But as the years went by, health problems started to hit the group hard. In 2002, Maurice Gibb, the heart and the funny guy of the band, suddenly faced some very serious health issues. He was rushed to the hospital, and sadly he passed away, leaving Barry and Robin absolutely heartbroken. With Maurice gone, the Bee Gees as a three-person group had to come to an end. The brothers decided to retire the Bee Gees name as a way of honoring Maurice, marking the end of their legendary run in music. His passing hit Barry and Robin incredibly hard, but their strong bond and their deep love for music stayed with them. In 2006, Barry and Robin got up on stage together for the first time since Maurice had died, not for a big fancy concert, but for a charity event in Miami that was really meaningful to them. It was a simple but very powerful moment that showed just how strong they were and how committed they were to keeping their family's musical legacy going. In the years that followed, Robin started facing his own serious health struggles. After being diagnosed with liver cancer, his condition slowly got worse, but he kept fighting quietly behind closed doors. Even though he was struggling and had to cancel performances, he stayed connected with his fans and impressed everyone with how brave and dedicated he was. In an interview, Robin's son, Robin Gibb, revealed a secret that nobody had known. Apparently, every single news outlet had been getting the story wrong. It was not the cancer that took his father Robin's life. He said his father had already beaten the cancer, and it was barely detectable anymore. It was actually kidney failure that ended his father's life. This helps explain the big gap between what the late singer had said about his cancer in February and the sudden turn his health took in March. It must have been really scary for other patients who thought that if Robin's condition could change that fast, maybe theirs could too. Back in early February, Robin Gibb told the BBC that he had a tumor removed from his colon and that it was nearly gone, and he was feeling great. He said from that point on it was just some cleanup treatments and that he was active and feeling really good overall. It left his fans totally confused when he went from sounding so positive to being in a coma in April and then passing away in May. Was he just not being honest with himself about how serious his cancer really was, or did it truly seem like it was getting better before things took a deadly turn? According to Robin, neither of those things was true. The kidney failure he experienced was a completely separate problem, even though it definitely got worse because of the stress that cancer and its really tough treatment put on Robin's body. The Daily Express described Robin as feeling frustrated about the disagreements among doctors over how to best take care of his father in his final weeks, and he made it clear he was not happy with the decisions made by the hospital staff. The Sun told the newspaper that his dad was doing just fine right up until 3 days before he died.